Right, sounds.
Sound should be coming now, George. There was a rookie error there. uh, yeah, the sound should be coming. No sound. Dan, I think we're on, I think we're good now.
Great, great.
Yeah, I can see you.
Coming
Ah,
through
there we
loud and
go.
clear.
And we're live. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Martin Tyler, eat your heart out. Guys, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. How is everybody doing? Let us know in the chat. We thought we'd hop on a live stream just to kind of interact with you guys, do a bit of a preview for the Arsenal game. Obviously, it was a big game yesterday in the title race between Arsenal and Man City. It felt weird having the Premier League on a day where there was European football on, didn't it, Dan? It was a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's weird how the biggest game of the Premier League season so far, I think it's fair to say, and like they'd have lost like millions of viewers across the world. Like the viewing figures for that must have been a real anomaly because normally that would have been like must-watch telly, but with all the Chelsea fans will have been watching the Champions League, and then fans around the world that had a horse in the Champions League race will have been watching that too. So it was really weird how that sort of fell midweek. But I did get sucked into watching the Premier League in the end. Watched the highlights of the Champions League after, and glad I did. To be honest with you, thought it was a good game.
I did it the other way round, but I think it's fair to say in it that City. I mean, Arsenal were very unfortunate to lose that game 3-1, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, I thought so. Man City weren't very good in the first half. I thought Arsenal were the better team, but as the game went on, it felt like Arsenal were going back into that. Sorry, Man City were going back into that, and in the end, the quality tells, and it's really interesting in that I think we've got in this game now at the weekend, we've got two teams with quite fragile mindsets and mentalities right now. And I think honestly, whoever gets the first goal and gives themselves that confidence boost, I know it's a cliche, and I know it seems a fairly obvious thing to say, but we'll go on and win the game because I just think if we concede a hell of a lot of early goals, but we also seem to score a lot of early goals as well. We're this really weird, like so many of our games are defined in that opening 15 minutes. I think if we can do something there, based on how Arsenal will be feeling off the back end of last night, how much they will know that, that if their game in hand, obviously this isn't it, but if they do win that game in hand, they can go back to the top of the league. And until they have that game, that will be weighing on the back of their minds every single time that it's still in their hands. And so I just think like if we can make one of those games where we go and get a crazy early goal, anything can happen. But that's a big kind of if, isn't it?
It is, mate. It is. I think I read earlier. Forgive me if this is an incorrect stat because this is just off the dome. I think it was something like 17% of Villa's goals this season have been conceded in the opening 15 minutes, and since Unai Emery's come in, especially as well. Generally, if we've got a 1-0 lead, we've been fairly decent at holding on to it. However, going a goal down is a completely different question, and obviously we don't come into this in brilliant form. Off a bit of a drubbing from Manchester City ourselves. So, we can sympathise with Arsenal there and Leicester. I mean, we didn't speak about the Leicester Spurs game, obviously, because it didn't really have that much bearing on what we were talking about post Man City. But to see them go and do Spurs 4-1, was it? That
Yeah.
was pretty crazy as well. So that kind of made me feel a bit better about losing to Leicester and maybe the manner of that defeat as well. But if you look at Arsenal, they've not won in the last 4 games, have they? You go back 4 games for their last win. 5 games, sorry, against Manchester United at home. They've played City twice in that period. Obviously lost to Everton where Dyche got his first win. And, frustrated at home against Brentford. I think the worrying thing is that despite the form, they have played well during these games. So
Yeah.
they're certainly going to come into this one against us and be right up for it, aren't they, mate?
Yeah, it's a weird one, man. It's a really weird one. I'm not looking forward to it, I won't lie, because this just stinks of like we've seen this game a million times. It's really weird because Arsenal were a team that we did really well against. We won 3 straight games. Like I know that's hardly like 3 straight games. It's not like a crazy run, but that's still an achievement relatively for the Villa. We put 3 straight wins past them between July 2020 and February 2021. I believe that starts with the Trezeguet back post game that effectively gets in the Premier League, all the way through to that win at the Emirates in lockdown where we won. Was it 3-0?
3-0.
Like Barkley, Watkins, etc., etc. So in that stretch, we did really well against Arsenal through the COVID lockdown, played well against them. But then since that game, we've lost each of our last 3 games against them, and so that sort of shows that they've been on this upward trajectory, and they have got a good run against us. They beat us, I think, 1-0 at Villa Park last season in this fixture. And I can see something similar happening. I do genuinely think that, like, to come back to that same point, mate, I do genuinely think it rides on that first 15 minutes so much, because that's what, as soon as we did that against City, as soon as Rodri scores that header at the near post, it's curtains, realistically. Like, at the Etihad, with, you spoke on the pod, mate, about that siege mentality that they had created, all the stuff before the game and everything like that. As soon as they've had that first goal, it's business as usual, and then it's a mountain to climb. There's probably not a harder place in the Premier League at the moment to come back to after going a goal behind. And I feel like it's a very similar situation here. If Arsenal go and put themselves 1-0 up, all of a sudden it's business as usual. It's, we're sorted, we're fine. It's back on cruise control. That run of games which you just mentioned, mate, those 4 games are suddenly behind them, and they'll see out the rest of the game pretty comfortably. Whereas I do genuinely think if we can go and get that first goal, it will rock them to the point where all of those doubts, which inevitably will be in their minds and in their fans' minds and in Mikel Arteta's too, will come to the fore. And I think those are the sort of situations like that Man United game in Unai's first spell, and how well we did against Spurs to hold out. And the further you get on in those games, the opportunities do present themselves, because your opposition, who are chasing a win, will open up. Those spaces will pop up in the middle of the park, and then if we can take advantage of those, as we did so well, particularly against Spurs in those central areas, anything can happen from there. But it's just, it's really hard to call, mate. It's really hard to call, but it's difficult to come into this with too much optimism, I feel.
Yeah, it's never ideal when you're playing somebody near the top of the league. George asking in the chat, is Diego back for tomorrow? I don't believe he is. I think Unai said in his presser the other week that he would be back. Well, he's back training. He's finally integrating on the grass. I almost said glass then, but that's just his ankle and his knee.
Yes.
He is. He's back training with the first team, but I think they may be targeting a return for like the end of the month, which would be great. Obviously, I'd be reluctant to throw him straight in just due to the nature of the injury and how quickly he's managed to recover as well, which is unusual for the type of injury that I think Diego's occurred. But obviously it's brilliant news, and I feel like we're good at keeping these things on the down low at Villa, aren't we? And then all of a sudden it kind of feels like they're back and sort of no time has passed and all this kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see Diego in this side. I think we'll look a lot better defensively because, the past, the last game, I said it on the last podcast, mate, but we looked so bad without Tyrone Mings, and I hope he's in the squad as well. Emery's presser should have been today, but I don't know if it was.
I've not seen anything.
I don't know if it will have been, just purely because of City playing and Arsenal playing the other day. So we could have that tomorrow. But it's going to be interesting. How are you feeling about Grealish now? I'm still mad. It's a great goal he scored against Arsenal. Do you know what? Like, there's been so many people have got so many different opinions on it, which is fine. I'm still hurt by it. I'm still feeling pretty cheesed off. What about you, mate?
I just he's still the lovable rogue for me, man. Like, I saw him, he did an interview post-match after the Arsenal City game on Amazon, came over and spoke to a bunch of the guys, and he just comes over this like infectious personality, and it's just when you hear him speak, it's so like difficult to imagine that he has a bad bone in his body and he's willing, like he's
Yeah,
capable of doing these things to people because he's just this happy-go-lucky kind of guy that seems to just breeze through life. And then you hear him speak, and you're like, oh, is he really like that malicious kind of guy that like I painted him out? But it's difficult. I honestly understand why everyone feels like a genuine sense of animosity towards him. Like if it wasn't there already, I can genuinely see it now. I just think that it's I find it a really difficult one to gauge, and I find the whole difficult like situation ever since he left very difficult to gauge. Like whether I'd have him back, whether I'd want him back, and everything like that is really difficult. Sometimes I think the best solution is, regardless what happens, is you just cut ties emotionally, and I think that might have been the moment that Villa fans did that.
yeah. I don't think you're wrong, mate. I don't think you're wrong. Um, good question here from George. Am I right in thinking Diego used to play CDM for his last club? I feel like he may have done in France. I don't really remember him doing that too much in La Liga, Dan.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I'll be honest with you. I don't watch much Liga. I didn't see. I've never seen him do it for Sevilla. But if anybody in the comments watches a lot of Nantes, because I don't, I'll be honest with you, shock horror,
What do you mean?
Or Estoril out in Portugal. If anyone in the comments watches Nantes or Estoril, please enlighten us. Because I don't know. But I can categorically say that for Sevilla, I don't think he did. Maybe in France, but as I said, not in La Liga. It will be great to have him back though. It will be great to have him back.
Yeah, it's that like pace and power. I remember seeing him play in the sort of early games and thinking, my God, like 'cause you don't really know when you sort of bring in players from Europe how it's going to go. Like we've seen with like Bailey and Bertie, how hit and miss it can be, and especially at centre half. But coming from Spain, and obviously being Brazilian, he's very good with the ball at his feet, athletic. There's pace, there's power, and I think that him and Mings is the partnership. Unless we go and get someone else, which is probably actually a good place to take this discussion at the moment, mate, because it was Real Sociedad's, I believe, Inago Martinez, who has been
Yes.
linked
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
a transfer. He's a free agent. Man City once wanted him. Guardiola tried to sign him a couple of Januaries ago, I believe. It never happened. Sociedad sort of held out, and he's now entering the final few months of his contract, meaning he's a free agent. He is a Barcelona fan, and Barcelona are interested in looking at bringing him in. Obviously, with their financial situation, free transfers are their bread and butter. But this is a really interesting one, mate, because he's 31, I believe,
Yeah.
and he's a name that I have been aware of probably for the past 6 years, to be honest, and somebody who has looked really solid in La Liga. From what I've seen, I know obviously you watch a lot more of it than me, mate. What are your thoughts on this one? Because he plays on the left as well, doesn't he?
He does. He does. You're absolutely right, mate. He's been so solid for Athletic Club, and I mean, I think it's very clear to see that we've been scouting in the Basque region because obviously Nico Williams was the big link in January for that wide player, and now it's Inigo, and he's been great. He's been great. He's been captain of that club for several games in that period as well. 31 years old, mate, as you say, that central defender. 5 months left of his current deal. Barca are currently the favourites to get that deal done. I think it was Diario Sport said that he's apparently determined to win Barcelona, and with Barcelona looking set to win La Liga this year, set to be back in the Champions League, and hopefully give a better account of themselves than they have done in recent years. It's a good time to be going back in there, and he's a player whereby obviously Barca do have some issues defensively in terms of the wage bill. The defensive structure has been amazing this season. They haven't even conceded 10 goals yet in the league. They've been rock solid, but they do need to get some names off that wage bill. And to be honest with you, I think defensively, guys like Eric Garcia, guys like that could be on their way out. I think if you take it into midfield, Franck Kessié, there's like a lot of players throughout that spine of the team that I do think will be leaving and will open spots. And we've seen the pull of Barcelona, despite all of their financial problems. Players do still really want to go there, and it's still a dream for a lot of players. And if you've got someone like Inigo, who's been in Spain playing against Barcelona, has always wanted to move there at 31, is probably the last chance to make a move to that elite stage. It's very difficult to see why he'd come to Villa over the likes of Barcelona. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible, and all of this is just rumours at the moment. The one thing we would have on that advantage, obviously, is that no one is getting in ahead of Ronald Araujo or Andreas Christensen or those guys at the moment. Whereas with Villa, I think he could probably work himself into the starting 11 pretty much straight away.
Is that a Diego and Martinez partnership?
Yeah, I think so.
Come first game of next season. It's interesting because, like, I think we kind of spoke on it briefly about Emi leaving as well. We have this really nice Spanish cohort at the club, which is obviously it's nice. And I think it was Luis Miguel Echegaray tweeted some time ago that Villa really need to put some resource into some Spanish socials, so as we can really tap into those Latin markets and really make the most of it off the pitch. But a nice little obviously if Emi stays, then you've got 3 Spanish speakers there in the defence. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I think it's like I can see like I don't know if people are concerned. Guys, let us know what you think about Inigo Martinez in the comments of the stream, and we'll have a look. Is that I don't want to be that guy, but is the age? Because you look at Diego. Obviously, he's not getting any younger either. Same with Ty. Really, Ty's nearly 30. Ez is about 26, isn't he? So you're signing a 31-year-old. Obviously, it's on a boss man. Wages are going to be high if you're going to lure him away from Barcelona. And I'm not worried about like the upside and the resale because he's a free transfer. So like that it doesn't mean anything really. But I think Perez has kind of hit on it. He said if Mings is still in charge next season, maybe there's another managerial change. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but what I would say is, things, personnel do have to change, and it'll be interesting to see how that position is sort of recruited for. Because Callum Chambers, my feelings haven't changed. Get him gone. There's all these issues with Courtney and Watford. Obviously, Courtney's still on our books, and he's been excluded from Watford's 25-man squad, which is concerning. But that's a player you're going to have to move on, get another body in there as well. So I just don't know. I think the point I'm trying to get at is like if you're going to, it's difficult because we want to win now, and if you want to win now, you sign players who are ready now, and Martinez fits that. Do you know what I mean? But I think in terms of like future proofing, like who's Villa's next centre back? Who's going to be that centre half for the next sort of 4 to 6 years?
Yeah,
that's going to come through after that. That's my concern.
Well, that's why I do understand like everybody clamouring for Pau Torres, but again, like you're in amongst Europe's elite there, so you don't exactly solve that problem. The one thing I will say that Tyrone Mings gives us almost every other centre back you've just named, mate, and most of the ones that we've linked to, is that he's about 6'5".
Yeah,
and that's such a massive factor. And I think when you take Mings out of the team and you see that win rate plummet, I think that's probably a massive part of it. We've lost all 3 of our games this season in which we haven't played Tyrone Mings. We've failed to win any of the last 9 without him. If you look a bit further than that, we've got 1 win in 12 since we came up without Ty, and that 1 win was at home against Norwich. So if he is out of this game at the weekend, I think you really have to look into that. But I think one of the reasons is that stat is because of his height, because of his stature, because of the presence he gives us at the back. And if you do go and pick up someone like Inigo Martinez, who, if I'm not wrong, I don't think he clears 6 foot. I think he comes in just under. Then that's huge. That's huge because I mean, Diego Carlos is an absolute beast. He's absolutely huge, and he's almost 6 foot wide, let alone 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
But he isn't. He's still not that aerial presence that Tyrone Mings is, and there aren't many players out there that are. And I think if you are willing to phase Tyrone out the side, then fine. But you really have to look at those intangible qualities which he brings. In his leadership, in his presence, but then also in that height and that ability to defend set pieces, is just huge. And so I think if you are going to replace Ty, you need to replace that as well, which really narrows down the search. And I'm not sure there's too many out there that fit that profile, really, mate.
No, I mean we've had a few comments here. Gomez, no, I wouldn't touch Joe Gomez with the barge pole personally. Having a really tough time at Liverpool at the moment. Obviously Van Dijk's out, him and Matip just don't really have that connection, and I feel like it would be an expensive risk. Now Nathan Ake, if we could attract Nathan Ake, Joe, I would be all over that. But he's sort of somehow managed to establish himself in this Manchester City side, and I think he's played like 9 of the last 11 games for them, started at least. So it's, I mean, he's left for he's Mings but better, really. Ake, obviously a product of the Chelsea academy, and it's had some really good loan spells with Watford and Bournemouth, and maybe it raised a few eyebrows, but he's loving life at City right now. I'd absolutely take that in a heartbeat. But again, like I think he's like 28, and obviously you can play. Centre half now, a decent centre half can probably still play in the Premier League till they're like 33. I mean, who am I kidding? Thiago Silva is still absolutely bossing it in the Premier League at 37 years old. So maybe I shouldn't be worried about the age concerns, but it would be nice to sort of. I mean, who's the last centre half that we had like through the academy and kind of played and stayed for a while? We're talking like Nathan Baker, Kieran Clark.
Yeah, probably, mate. Yeah, that's very fair. I think like even before that, like what do you go back? Gary Cahill.
Yeah, and he
How
wasn't
far
here for
back do you
long.
go? Yeah, so it's really interesting, mate. I mean, there's definitely value out there. It just doesn't it feel right now that it's really hard to shop well in this transfer market. That like in every position, there's a really limited pool of like players that you can go and get. Obviously, so much of this we've spoken about it with number nines, we've spoken about it with wide players, sixes as well. Thankfully, we've plucked an absolute gem in Bubakar Kamara, but there's not a lot of those out there. I think like if it were me, like you've really got to go and be quite savvy with your dealings and really try and pick out some gems because there are them out there, and I think we're going to see more and more clubs going to source as we've done with John Duran and players like that. And I think it's difficult to do that for a centre back, but I think clubs are just going to have to get so savvy with their business and step out of the norm. And yeah, guys like Inigo Martinez, the fact that Barcelona are literally waiting in the wings to snap them up tells you a lot about sort of the state of the transfer market right now and how you do have to shop in places perhaps you wouldn't use like usually to get a deal done. But yeah, it's a really good point, and this is a point for whether it's for now or whether it's almost for a different podcast. Is that I do feel a little bit aggrieved, to be honest with you, with the state of our academy because don't you
Yeah,
always feel like we're always hearing about these players that are coming through. These players are always doing well in the under 23s, and then all of a sudden, there's just they can't make that step up into the first team. And we had that amazing team that won the FA Youth Cup a few years ago, and none of them have made the step. Like like JJ is obviously the one at the moment that's playing there, but I don't think he was in that side. And obviously, Carney's been sold, and all of the other guys, we've sent Louis Barry on failed loans. Yeah, it seems just like we're on that. They're on the verge. Like
yeah,
players come through at 18, 19. They're playing in the first team nowadays at 18, 19. We did this with Hepburn Murphy, and that we just did nothing with him for so
yeah,
long that he's now playing in Cyprus or whatever. And I think these lads have a higher ceiling, but I do feel a little bit aggrieved, to be honest with you, because we're promised so much from the academy, but apart from Jacob Ramsey and Carney, who went for 20 mil to Chelsea, that's been it.
yeah. It's like it's a dual-edged sword, isn't it? Because like with these young players, and when you're talking about like who do you go out and recruit and all that kind of stuff, you can't like, especially at centre half. Realistically, you're not signing an under 23 centre half that hasn't played 100 games because there's no guarantee on what you're getting, right? But then you may as well nurture that. I was just trying to have a think of who is good and young and who would be really nice to have. And my mind went straight to Pierre Kalulu at AC Milan, but like that's never going to happen. Fantastic French player, really sort of coming of age this season. Can play right back and centre half, but like I don't think we attract him, and I don't think we can afford him. So yeah, and it's an interesting point on the academy, mate, because like, Cam Archer scored a huge goal in the race for automatic promotion last night for Middlesbrough, Bramall Lane. If I'd have known, I didn't even realise, I'd have gone, because I'm literally like a 50-minute walk away. I could have watched that masterclass in person. But you're right, there are some questions that need to be raised of how we get these guys out and how we integrate these people in, because it's all, it's brilliant. We've got Caden Young, who's been in and around the bench, and I think Reiki was as well, and obviously there's the two sub-keepers, but I think that's probably more of just the circumstances of how thin the squad is, that they were sort of on the bench. But like, what's next for Cam Archer? Because I love Cam. I think he's brilliant. Honestly, I think he's more than capable of making the jump, but Dean Smith didn't loan him out because he met, the sort of the word was that he was good enough and he wanted him in and around the squad, but he never really got the opportunity. Steven Gerrard, said he was going to lean on him and then didn't, and then ultimately has, stinted his career by 6 months because we've had to get him out on loan now in the January. And he's come back and, he's had 5 goal involvements in 5 games since joining Middlesbrough. They're third in the Championship. He'll probably get to at least 10 goal involvements by the end of the season, very least. Talking both goals and assists. But like, and I think it is a fair question. Like, is Cam Archer good enough to be starting for Villa now? I don't know. But does that make me a hypocrite because I want John Duran to be starting?
I honestly think, mate, that I remember saying this a little while back on the podcast, where I was like, I find it really difficult to envisage spots that are open for young players in this first team because we demand, and rightly so as a fan base because of the promises we've been given from the owners, but we demand big money signings in each position. So say, argument's sake, say Tyrone Mings leaves the club this summer. Literally just spitballing, or Matty Cash or someone like that. The first thing is to go, right, we're 40 million, address that. You have to be so brave to bite the bullet and to to open that spot up and go be like, no, you know what, let's try something new and let's open that spot up, because I don't think giving kids, keeping them in around the squad for 20 minutes at the end of the game helps them. I think Louis Barry's a great example because he's been out on, this is his 4th loan already.
Yeah.
He's 19.
Different levels as well.
That's what I mean. It's 4 loans. Ipswich sent him out, didn't work. Swindon didn't go too badly. He got 6 goals in 14 league games there, so that's not too bad. MK Dons was a flat-out disaster. He's now gone to Salford. He's played 4 league games with them. Not all of them starts, I should say. But he's yet to score for them as well. So all of a sudden, he comes back to Villa at the end of the season. What do you do with Louis Barry? Is it really a fifth loan in 3 years? Like, and this is the problem that I see with like a few, like Aaron Ramsey. What's the plan? What's the plan? Kane Kessler-Hayden. It's literally, the list goes on and on, all the way up to Cameron Archer, who you go, okay, what's the plan? And honestly, like, why if you're Cameron Archer, why would you stay much longer? Because like he knows clearly how good he is. He knows the damage they can do in that division. If a championship club flat out went and signed Cameron Archer, he fires you to promotion. And if a club comes and puts that money on this table, I can't think of a reason why he'd want to stay at Villa because of the promises that seem to have been made to him. And I just look at these young lads, and I do just worry a little bit, to be honest with you, man, because it just seems like we're loaning and waiting, and I don't know what we're waiting for, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, like Kessler's an interesting one as well because he looks really good at the youth level. Obviously, had his loan out at Huddersfield Town. Now, I work with a Town fan, and he had a really tough time. He had a really tough time, and people are calling for him to come back and play for us, and he couldn't get in the Huddersfield Town side, who have sat bottom of the Championship for most of the season. So, like, what's different? What's going to change? And I think it's interesting. I was just trying to think, like, young players who've come in and just exploded. You're thinking Saka, Martinelli, Smith Rowe to a certain extent. Not necessarily Phil Foden. That was always a bit of a slow burner. I hate to mention his name, but Mason Greenwood. The impact that he had on the Manchester United team when he was introduced, the goals that he scored. Like, is Cam capable of that? I think he might be. And what makes me think he is the fact that he scored against Chelsea. He scored a hat-trick against Barrow, and he looked like he'd been playing for 20 years. And it was Barrow. So I don't want to get too carried away. But I think I see wisdom beyond his age. And as a few of you guys are saying in the comments, he's a clinical finisher. Cam knows how to score goals. That's the most difficult thing to do in football. And if you have that, then you have to play at the highest level. Like, you're destined for it. If you know where the back of the net is, you're going to have a very good career. So if this second half of the season is where Cam sort of refines his craft again, obviously because he hasn't really been, he didn't do much in terms of coming off the bench for us when he was at the club. Didn't really get the minutes that he would have wanted, or some of us would have imagined as well. Hopefully, next season, is Cam, Duran and Watkins, is that a fee? Like, is that okay next season? Like, is that, because again, Joe Duran is more of a live wire, unpredictable, is exciting, absolutely. I think the way that Emery plays him with the forwards, and it's going to be this 4-2-2 or 4-4-2, however you want to look at it, because that's what he did at Villarreal and all that kind of stuff. I think, and I don't want to get too carried away, but I think Duran and Cam, or Duran and Watkins, is the way forwards, because we know he likes to play with more of a focal point and then somebody who can sort of play off. And I was thinking about it, it's interesting you mentioned Louis Barry earlier, mate, as well, because despite how horribly it's gone, I can't help but feel like he's one of them ones again where he could, like, you put him in the Premier League, he could just explode. And maybe it's a case of he's gone to these struggling sides. I think Swindon aside, obviously Swindon were a decent side. I think they were sort of pushing for promotion in the league when they had like Kessler as well. I don't know if Barry's one of them ones where like he needs to play with good players to look better, and to sort of like know what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, because I think there are some players that are like that. Like, it's not like, he's clearly not a player like Grealish where he went to Notts County and he just did it all and it was so easy. If he's got quality supplying him, I think Barry could be really useful in this sort of formation that Emery likes to play. But I don't necessarily think he'll get that chance.
No, I don't think he will, mate. You mentioned that front three of Watkins, Duran, and Archer. If we went into next season with that three, that scares the shit out of me, and it's a shame. And this is what I mean, mate. This is what I mean. I just think the standards in the Premier League are so high that unless you are, you mentioned the guys that have been blooded into those top teams, but if you look at Jacob Ramsey, he was a player that played in that attacking midfield position in the lockdown season, and he played quite high up, still in an essential role, but and he never looked like he was going to get a goal or an assist. And
Yeah,
that was the problem. He would always play well, but he never looked like he was good value to deliver the final ball, deliver that final pass. And it genuinely took him a season of pretty consistent starts to start to look like the player that he's gone on to become. So it took a season for JJ, I think, to get up to speed, and that was a season in which there was no pressure from the stands because it was in the lockdown year. Are we willing? How many positions are you willing to do that in? Probably not many. Definitely not a striker,
yeah,
because if you don't score goals, you can't win games. Literally comes down to that. And say that, someone like John Duran, say he takes a season and a bit to get up to the speed of the Premier League, because coming straight from MLS, that's a Goliath leap in quality, and the standard of football and the manner of the football. I mean, MLS is chaos. It's why it's such a great league to watch, because it's very Bundesliga like in that it's very end to end. It's very chaotic. Um, it's always the MLS and the way that it's played is very much shown in the fact that great players going in their careers there, but great managers never do. It's like
yeah,
you always have these amazing players, and like the managerial quality in that league just doesn't reflect that. And it shows on the pitch. And so, say Duran takes that time, it's like we have to be so patient, and Villa Park famously isn't that. Um, and that's what I worry about, man. I've just got a horrible feeling that over the next 2 or 3 years, one by one, they're sold to clubs in and around the English Football League, down in the Championship or League One and beyond. I think the same with Finn Azaz. Finn Azaz is a great player. He's playing
yeah.
so brilliantly, but there's clearly no plans for him in the first team. So why keep loaning him? Why not just cash in? Because he's never going to go and play for Villa. I think he's in his early 20s now, which sounds crazy, but that's just too old, unfortunately. And I just don't see the benefit in continually loaning out these players. But hopefully, mate, I hope I'm proved wrong, but I do just worry a little bit.
On strikers, I saw some more. I mean, it seems to happen every sort of month or so, but I heard some more sort of Tammy murmurs. Is that a sidestep?
Um, I don't
Because
know, man.
he's struggled a lot this season, Tammy.
Yeah, I think he is the very top bracket of what we could reasonably get. I don't think Villa could attract a better player than Tammy, because I think once you look above a Tammy Abraham, you're really looking in quite an established bracket. He has struggled a lot this season. There's been better glimpses for him in the second half of the season. I do still believe in him. He's a player that I think has done it consistently enough to prove that there are barren spells. And but I think he's the best we could possibly get. I really do. I don't think he's the be all and end all. And like it'd be really interesting to see what that next move is. But I'm just not convinced there's much better out there for us to go and get.
Yeah, it's a tough one, mate. It's a tough market. It's interesting, because when there's so many players. Like I think we've funded like half of the championship in terms of like forwards and midfielders that have sort of come through our doors and gone by. But Callum Robinson scored for Cardiff City against Birmingham the other day, late on, and obviously Cal's a Villa fan, so he loved that. Super Andy Vyman scored against the Blues a month ago as well. He was obviously all over that. It's always nice to see that kind of stuff when it pops up. Whether like, loved getting 3 points against this lot. Barry Bannon's always good for it as well. Obviously they're in a different division at the moment, Wednesday. But we should probably talk more about the game. We've got very
Yes,
sidetracked to
yes.
we got very sidetracked to one thing I did want to talk about to bring it back to that Arsenal City game the other night, mate, was Tommy Asu. He's a player who struggled for minutes, and it's understandable because Ben White has been really good, as much as it pains me to say, because I do think he's quite average. But he's really nailed down that right back spot. He's made it his own. He's made it really hard for Tommy Asu to come in. And then just at the point in time where he gets his opportunity, Arteta's looking to rotate his squad. He gets absolutely cooked by Jack Grealish. And it's almost criminal the way he gives away that ball for that Kevin De Bruyne goal, isn't it? And as we know, mate, Villa love to
Yeah.
attack down the left. If it is, do you see Tommy Asu starting again after that? I'm not too sure, but it's going to be an area to look at for sure, whether it's White or Tommy Asu.
Yeah. Really interested to see what happens with Thomas Partey as well, because that was obviously such a massive loss for them.
Yeah,
in that City game. I'm not sure. I don't know the extent of Thomas Partey's injury because he did turn up to the game in a tracksuit, which would suggest it was pretty touch and go. And so, yeah, I honestly think that those are really big decisions now that Arteta's got to make, whether he trusts with Tomiyasu. I think Arteta's the kind of manager that I think he would side by Tomiyasu. I think he would back him, and he's such a brilliant one-on-one defender. Didn't have his best game, but he's had so many for Arsenal in like as an out and out right back. He's been excellent. So I do think he'd go with Tomiyasu, but for me, it's like if Partey plays in that midfield or not.
The midfield is going to be where it's won or lost. Somebody said in the comments that Booba looks like he slept in a car for the past 2 weeks. I think that's the best analogy that I've seen. That perfectly summarises how Booba's been over the past 2 games. He's not had a brilliant time, but you're right. This game is definitely going to be won or lost in the midfield because Jorginho's come on and I'm in two minds as to whether it was a good signing or not because he was out of contract in the summer. They've paid £12 million. This is someone who came second in the Ballon d'Or voting last year, which is absolutely crazy, by the way. And I think he is clearly a very good footballer. Jorginho is a very good footballer, but I do think there is there's credence to the argument of he sort of slows things down, and things are very sort of vertical when they perhaps don't need to be. Booba needs to step it up, man. Booba needs to step it up. And I think this could be a good game to sort of redeem that, especially if, as you say, Partey isn't in. Joe, you're spot on, yeah. Alleged rapist. Don't want to get sued by Partey. But, yeah, absolute scumbag. I think as well, I think it's gone under the radar a little bit, mate. Douglas Luiz has been really good over I think probably since January. I think Dougie has looked really good. Obviously, he scored from the corner last time at the Emirates, so hopefully there's a bit more of that action as well. But obviously, it's going to be an interesting one because he's obviously he was linked to Arsenal and almost went on deadline day. There was that whole will he, won't he? So I'm sure he's going to want to improve because I mean Douglas Luiz is a better player than Jorginho. I'm not trying to sell Dougie, but if Arsenal want to pay 40 million in the summer, then I think I would probably take that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't. Jorginho is a really interesting player for me. I do see the ability there, and it's interesting how every single manager, when Sarri left, it was like Jorginho's done for. There's no way like any other manager is going to use him, and every other manager that has come in since then has made him an absolute rock of their side. From Lampard to Tuchel to Potter, Jorginho played regular football. And I think there's something in that. He's clearly a very versatile player, and I do rate him because everybody said when Sarri left, that was it. There was no future for for Jorginho in English football. And he's proved everybody wrong, and he's carved out a pretty decent career off the back of it. And now he's got the chance to go on and win the Premier League. Obviously, he's won the Champions League in that time as well. But there is definitely a drop off in Thomas Partey. But I don't think that's necessarily Jorginho's fault because they're just two very different players. And I think they suit two very different games. But yeah, Kamara will no doubt have a bit of bee in his bonnet after what happened in the last home game. Obviously against Leicester, made that mistake and gave the ball away. So he'll know that one to come back and play well. But yes, it is interesting, mate. As for Dougie in the summer, I feel like he's gone a little bit off the ball.
Yeah.
Not like he's been bad, but I do feel like there was a point in the season where Dougie was starting to really put some good games together. They still have those flashes, those games against Spurs, but I don't feel like we're seeing Dougie as prominently and shine like he was at points this season. And if he does want that move, he's really going to have to earn it because, joking apart, if that Arsenal move was on, has it not just closed? Regardless of whether Jorginho or Luiz is a better player, is that window now shut?
It's an interesting one, mate. It is because I think what's interesting about Jorginho as well is obviously Man City were after him and Chelsea beat him to it. And who was at Man City at the time? It was Mikel Arteta. Mm-hmm. So this is a player that he's clearly got a lot of admiration for and is obviously a very different player to Dougie. I think it will if Arsenal don't manage to win the league, which it could happen now. I was pretty certain that they were going to see it through, but the past week and a half, 2 weeks, they've really sort of bottled it in a way, I guess. If they fall short and have to go again, they're going to be in the Champions League. They're going to need to sign players. They're going to need to strengthen that squad because, as you said, when Partey's out, it's night and day. And obviously, like El Neni isn't getting any younger. Xhaka is the same. So it'd be an interesting one. Before we go, mate, because obviously it's apprentice time right now. We're eating into apprentice time. We'll do score predictions. What are you saying, mate?
It says a lot that Love Island was my 9 o'clock
entertainment
that I was wrapping up for. Don't hurt me, comments, please.
I'll be watching it too, mate. Don't you worry.
Prediction. I actually think I got the Man City one right. I think I said 3-1.
You did.
I only managed to predict defeats correctly. I think Villa are going to lose. I'm really sorry. I think Villa are going to lose. I think we'll lose 2-1.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. Guys, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Let us know if you would like us to do a live stream again anytime soon. We'd love to bring back Morgan and Wise, the Football Manager streams.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do that when we get a bit more time. But yeah, thank you to everybody who joined. Hit a like, comment your thoughts below, subscribe, share this. This will be up on YouTube as well, so you can go back and revisit it. I've got a text, Holte and the Rob. Love that. Yeah, we've absolutely got a text. I think that's a perfect note to end on.